In the following videos, you will learn how to create methods that perform native SQL queries. Until now, we used GPA query methods to save information into our database, to update and delete information from a database. And although you can do a lot with GPA query methods, there is a way to write native SQL queries. Let's have a look at the difference between GPA query methods and GPA native SQL query. When using GPA query methods, an SQL query will be created for us automatically by the framework based on the way we write a method name. In the example on the screen, when a query method name is parsed, an SQL query will be created to select a record from a database where the value in the database column name user ID is equal to the parameter passed in. In the case of native SQL query, the name of the method is not really important. Note that in the example on the screen, for the native query, the method name is very different and it does not follow the rules for creating GPA query methods. You can give a method any name because the framework will not use it to create an SQL query. The query that will be run, you define as a value in a query annotation. Let's have a look at our native SQL query one more time. On this slide, you should see an example of native SQL query and a structure of user database table which we have on this project. So the way you write SQL query in the query annotation should be exactly the same way you write SQL query which you run in the database client. Let's assume that for your project, you use MySQL database. If so, then the syntaxes you use to create a SQL query should be the one you will use to write this SQL query in MySQL Workbench or in a command line in the terminal window after you log into MySQL. The names of the columns in your SQL query should match the names of the columns in your MySQL database table. It does not matter much whether you use lowercase or uppercase names in your SQL query as long as the name of the column is the same. For example, in the case of users database structure you see on the screen, the field user ID contains an underscore. So in the SQL query you write, you should also include an underscore in the column user ID.